We're starting off strong, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, folks, even before I do the regular intro, I just want to say, Grace, you are actually, I know you're a dating expert, but you're also an IT specialist. So great work, Grace. Great work. Okay. All right. Hello. Welcome back to Psychadjacent. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas Hughes. I am very happy to be back for yet another week. I hope everyone has been doing well since our last episode. Like I've been mentioning, I'll be in touch with scheduling changes as they pop up. We do have more episodes coming in the next couple of weeks. Be on the lookout for those. With me here today, though, is Grace Lee. Say hello to the audience, Grace.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me today.
Well, thank you for stopping by.
I'm just gonna give up on my AirPods. Just
I'm gonna tell you right
hopefully,
now. This is actually one of
hopefully a fire truck won't decide to park here.
I think you
fine.
should also let your cat out of the just run free so we can also just add to the chaos that we've been. All right, so let's
Well,
go.
I do have a dog, so
You have a dog also?
we'll see how that works out.
All right, so let's just start the intro music and get going. We're back. Okay, so Grace, I came across your profile on Instagram months ago, I think. And I don't remember exactly what the post was, but I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious. And I obviously looked more into your profile. And I think I had just left a conversation with a couple friends of mine's, and they're married. And usually when I have, as a single person, I have those conversations with married people. If I give them a positive story, their response is usually, "Oh man, I miss those days with being single." And then I give them a negative story, and it's like, "Oh man, I'm glad I'm not out there anymore." So I wanted to speak with you about, from an expert, about what it's like out there as a professional helping people date online. So this is what I know of you. You are the founder of A Good First Date. You are based in New York City, and you work with men and women of all ages, primarily focused on online dating. But I'm curious, how did you get into this field? How did you become an online dating expert?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This is it's always nice to reach out and have these conversations. And to answer your question, I started out in a very the kind of online dating career path. Started in banking. I I followed a very straight and narrow path from an early age. I was a great student, went to Emory, and then did a graduate degree at Cambridge in England. And then I started with HSBC and worked in corporate banking in England and in Asia. I was married by the time I was 26. I had my first child at 28, my second at 30. Very, very happily married until one day my husband told me that he couldn't do this anymore.
Right.
And I had no idea what he was talking about, but soon discovered what he was talking about. And from that, I was living in Shanghai at the time. So I picked up my kids, moved to New York City, and I was 34. It was really the first time I had been single, especially living in New York City. And with Match.com as my wingman, I just went out there and dated anyone with a pulse. Like, I just dated my ass off. And I was really, I didn't want kids. I didn't want marriage. I just wanted something different. And it was just a whole new world to me. And somewhere in that mix, I had put my name on a matchmaking database. And they called me and asked me to come in and interview for, as a potential match for their client. And the only answer to that question is yes, I will absolutely come and have this conversation, whatever it is. And so I showed up. She asked me all kinds of really interesting questions, like, what are you looking for? And I didn't know how to answer any of these questions. What do you want? Why do you think you're still single? That was a real stumper. She asked me height, age, body type, ethnicity. It was just this crazy checklist. It felt like Christmas. I could just put in this request.
Right.
Anyways, by the end of the interview, I asked her point blank, like, is this a real job? Like, you go around the city and interview people about dating, talk about dating. And long story short, I was not matched with a client, which is probably a good decision, but I was hired as a matchmaker. And I worked in that space for not very long. I learned a ton about just what single people are going through in New York City. I'd probably talked to over 200 men and women who were speaking to me as a matchmaker, but really were talking about the struggles that they had been through. And I found that I really gravitated towards that piece. And then the other thing I found was that people match themselves pretty efficiently. It's hard for maybe an average level matchmaker to predict chemistry, to predict who's going to be attracted to on a lot of different levels. And I realized that my skill, through having put myself online for so many years, and having pretty much been down every random path in dating,
Right.
that I could really help people. I could really help people use this amazing technology that they definitely hate. And that has really been my focus. And I think that a couple of things. I think dating is such an interesting access point to understanding who a person is. It's so intensely personal, and it is very equal opportunity. Like, you can be gorgeous, you can be less attractive, you can be young, old. Everybody has heartache. Everybody struggles with finding intimacy and developing trust. So it's always an interesting story and an interesting path.
I would agree with
And
that.
then the other thing, yeah, and the other thing about online dating is that just the exercise of creating a profile, when done thoughtfully, is actually a really important exercise. And it helps us to define who we are and what we want. And, we can get into that, but it's really not in that typical way that I think most people will look at, their checklists and their red flags and, their green, whatever the deal breakers. And so over the years, as I've worked with clients, it's been really fun to see how much they discover about themselves. And just, those moments, I think, you may have this too. And you have a little breakthrough that helps them to really enjoy and take advantage of being single. Because I'm not someone who wants anybody to get in a relationship necessarily. I think it's just really important to enjoy this part of our lives.
That is an amazing story. One thing that stood out to me that I think I forgot to mention, there are single people, there are married people, but then there's people that were married and are no longer married anymore. So that was sort of your story. You went from you went from being married. I think you said 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you were back out into the world. And I don't know how much experience you had with dating before you met your husband or not, but that must have been a completely new or different experience for you to have to learn everything all over again.
It's funny. I was having this conversation with a friend who was also divorced, and we talked about the first date we had been on after we were allowed to. The first date that I went on, he was a little bit older than me, a part-time model slash
Oh,
bartender slash ex Navy SEAL
whoa.
who knew a lot of things about 9/11 being an inside job. And he was really attractive, and I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, wow, how interesting. I kind of went into everything with sort of like earnestness and optimism. And the first time that I kissed him, I was like, it was like my brain exploded. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is why people cheat on each other. This is so amazing. And I got home and he didn't text, in the next half an hour. And I was so heartbroken. And then he texted and I was so excited. And we fought and we made up. And I mean, it was a lot, but really the point is I hadn't experienced any of those emotions for over 10 years. When I was married, it was sometimes like I was sort of annoyed or I was kind of happy or and it's not to diminish that at all, but and this is what I tell people when they're feeling like the intensity of their emotions. Like this is where literature and music and art is born from. This is just like really intense emotion. And so I suppose, those feelings were really exciting to me, even if they were hard. And I really just kind of went along with things, really went along with things because I didn't even know, like you said, I didn't know what the rules were. I didn't know how to respond to things. And it was really trial by error. And there were a lot of errors. So I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And, fast forward to 10 years, and I have been ostensibly single for, little things here and there, but I still have heartbreak. I still have that kind of like embarrassment and remorse and all that stuff. But I think the difference is deciding, deciding when that's worth it. And also just having more of a sense of control, especially with some of my older clients, and I mean, not older clients, but clients that are more experienced in dating. They have a lot of regrets and remorse and sometimes shame about the bad dates they've been on. And I really believe that those things are, you've been down that road. I don't think I need to date another Navy SEAL part-time model.
Right.
Works at a bird joint. Nothing is wrong with that, obviously. Just I've been down that road, so I don't necessarily need to. And the collective experience of that is called wisdom, which is why it's cool to be older
Yeah.
because you get to do things hopefully smarter.
Yeah. I would think if you date enough, you're gonna make enough mistakes. I mean, obviously a mistake was made somewhere because you're still dating and trying to figure out what's best for you and trying to find that other person that's right for you. So I mean, in terms of how things have changed over the past year or so, how would you say your approach or maybe even your clientele has changed since COVID has happened?
I just want to go back to one thing that you said, which is really interesting.
Sure.
And you said mistakes must have happened because you're still single, is essentially what you said.
Yeah.
And I think from if you define being single as the result of a mistake, then yeah, I agree. But mistake, I mean, I guess sometimes, and this is not, I'm just picking up on something that I hear a lot, is that mistakes are actually not the reason why I'm single.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think it's more like it's part of the process. I made decisions based on what I learned, and I haven't found the person that matches, but it's not an objective, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of mindset that I really try to get away from because if you define the strength of your process on outcome, then everybody is a failure out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's just semantic. So I just wanted to touch on that. But to answer your question, COVID has been really challenging for all of us. And I think for single people, probably before COVID, to be single meant to be unattached and to be free to explore. And once the lockdown happened, to be single really meant to be alone.
Right.
And I think that was the first time for me anyways, that was very true. So I faced really important questions around what I wanted, how this felt, how important companionship was to me. And then, we're innovative and resilient. And so we came up with different ways of getting around this through video dating. And there are plenty of stories where people like really connected over video dates. And there was this whole new protocol, and then things started opening up and now we have to shift again. So some of us are vaccinated, some of us aren't, some of us are comfortable with risks, some of us aren't. The kind of steps that we take, like sometimes now people will say, oh, I want to do a video date before every in-person date. So really this all comes down to is really being more transparent about what you're comfortable with. And in a way, what's cool about all of these new steps is that there's kind of like a pacemaker that's been introduced in all of this, where necessarily we've had to move more slowly just because of health risks. So I think,
When you when
I
you
mean, the
say
weather's out.
when you say slowly, do you mean like just the process of meeting someone online and then going out on a date, that process slowing down? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's at least in New York City, it's probably reverting a little bit more towards what it was, but definitely not. I haven't spoken to a single person that feels like, oh, it's just like before. Just yeah, it can't be. But I think as the weather gets better here and as people are vaccinated, testing is more easily available, they are stepping out more. And I have plenty of people they're like, okay, let's give this another try. I'm really ready. Nobody wants to be that socially distanced this summer, I would have thought. I mean, we've proven that we can live by ourselves. We've all graduated with a degree in that.
Yeah.
So now it's time to really to get back out there. But as people are getting out there, it's like, oh God, this again. And then they're getting off. And then it's this pattern of, okay, I'm gonna really do this. They get back online, and then it's the same old experience that they had. They get back offline, and then they wait 3 weeks, they get back online. They have a 2-week relationship, get back offline. And so it's this pattern that where years go by and they aren't necessarily getting closer to what they're looking for. So that's really where I think the work has to come in. And as it relates to COVID, it's really about communicating what you're comfortable with and and really just developing the language around that, and also kind of being okay with different levels of comfort, because people are just so all over the map on eating inside, eating outside, like every single nuance you can think of.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that was an important point that you made when I mentioned the mistake aspect. It kind of feeds into what a person's goals are, and in terms of what people want out of online dating, are people optimistic about reaching those goals?
People are unrealistic about reaching those goals.
Go on. What do you mean by that?
Online dating is only there for one purpose, and that purpose is to get on a good first date. Anyone who is going Anyone who's going on the dating app to find a husband or a wife or a long-term relationship is going to be disappointed. Um, there was this I posted this thing about the Baylor coach, and they pulled up an interview from him in 2003, and he talked about how he joined the tournament to win games and to have a chance at winning the championship. And it really struck me that, and a lot of things in life are like this, that you're going on the online dating app to have a chance at meeting someone really great, but you really have to approach it one date at a time.
Okay.
And so when people go on there, they go on the date, it's like, oh, it's not, he wasn't the one, she wasn't the one, they did this one thing. I knew it in the first 5 seconds. Like, yeah, that might be true. And sometimes that is true, but it's the sense of disappointment that comes after
Mm.
that makes dating and being single sometimes so difficult and debilitating. Because if you were to shoot, if you were to go and do anything and expect to win every single time, like you would be disappointed in your entire life. But somehow this mindset, whereas we're very reasonable, um, after you take the LSAT one time and you were really hoping to come out with a perfect score and you didn't, and then you stop studying for 2 months. Like that's kind of the mindset that we're approaching online dating with. And so just out of the gate, the objective of the objective of the dating app is to go on a first date, a good first date. And that's the name of my business, is a good first date, because I realized so many dating apps and so much dating culture speaks to single people like I'm going to get you married, I'm going to find you love, like if he really loves you, if she really loves you. Like I'm a single person, and when I hear those messages I feel like I'm failing.
Mm.
And it just isn't true.
Right.
This is not how life works.
Right.
Love is incredibly lucky, it's serendipitous, there's timing, and also there's a little skill. You have to know who you are, and you have to know, what kind of, I hate this word, but what kind of energy makes you happy. That much is true. But this idea that you can control it down to a, finely honed process, if you just have the right list, all that stuff, if that was true, like we'd all be like we would all be in really successful relationships.
Right.
But even if you just look at the divorce rate, and even if you look at, take a look at Match.com's stock chart. Like that's one of the fastest growing companies out there. Why? Because so many people don't get it right anyways. There are probably more people searching than have found it. So I think really just going into this, a successful client for me is one that can date it's a net neutral at the very least. They don't hate it. It's not a drag. It's a net neutral. And then hopefully it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's a learning experience. And, single people have this opportunity to expand their world. Like, when was the last time a married person made new friends and met someone from a completely different walk of life? Like that just doesn't happen. So single people, we have this opportunity, but we have been trained and talked to believe that there's only one successful outcome of all of this, and that is to be married, or whatever that looks like. And so this is, I think, one of the fundamental parts of what I do with people, is like really helping them to to understand what I'm saying, and to really feel it, and to really feel that this dating app is a tool, that they are driving the bus, that they're in charge, and that, you know, a line in the water, they're going to use it. We're going to define what feels right to them. And you're just going to keep the line in the water, keep doing it. And, my whole thing is to trust the process, trust the process, because the process is called dating. And as you date, you will meet people, and you're putting yourself in the best possible position to find someone really great.
I think that message is very important, not just for the single people, but also the married people that are giving the advice to the single people. And that's so
Right.
important here. So important. So, I mean, you mentioned creating a profile. You mentioned, what makes the best client. Could you talk to me a little bit about your clientele? What sort of services your company provides them? What can you tell me about that?
My clients are really all over the map, like literally all over the United States. The youngest client I worked with was 24 and the eldest 70. Um, they are from all different backgrounds, all different religions, all different jobs. But what they all have in common is that they are just curious. and they want to do, they know that something isn't going right, and they want to do something to change the way that they're dating. And so, date coaching is a totally weird thing. Like, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm an Asian American banker. Like what the hell is date coaching? My parents are like, what degree did you, can you get certified? Um, so, so I get it. But the truth is, we go to personal trainers to help our fitness. We go to nutritionists, we go to psychiatrists, but dating is like probably the most important part of a single person's life. So to seek help and to really admit that, hey, like this isn't going well for me right now, in a culture where we feel like, well, you're kind of a loser or have confidence problems if you need help. And it's a shame that people feel that way. But all of my clients are, I think what they have in common is they're people that are always learning and for whom self-development is super, super important. And the work that we do mostly begins with online dating, but every session starts with the same question, which is, what would you like to work on today? What are your goals for this session? How can we best achieve those goals, and where do you want to begin? And sometimes it's about creating a profile. Sometimes it's about, I had a first date, I didn't hear from him and I'm freaking out. Sometimes it's, I've gone on 4 dates and I didn't like a single person. So yeah, it's really, I think online dating though is really important because, like, especially now, it's really the kind of only choice we have.
Especially now.
And
Yeah, especially now.
and also think about, I mean, it's really funny to me when, especially when married people say like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. Like, I just met my spouse in elementary school. We've been in love ever since. And I just think like, if I had to be married to someone in my kindergarten class, that would be not good. That would be a terrible outcome.
Yeah.
So, 0% of people have said this to me, but I believe in it firmly. Like, how amazing is online dating? Like, I've met so many different people that I would never have met ever. I've learned so many different stories, things that have helped me in every part of my life, from my professional life, from my relationship with my kids, and even like, I try to get like a new song recommendation out of every out of every text exchange I have. Like,
Yeah.
I just think, again, like, we have this opportunity to really expand the way that we see the world. And that's something that is lost on a lot of people,
I mean,
I
speaking
think.
speaking more on that, do you think that there is, or maybe it's changed? I don't know your opinion on stigma as it relates to online dating. And I asked that question because I remember it must have been 2011 or 2012. I was in medical school, and I think I met two other doctors that were about to get married. And the typical question, how did you guys meet and all this other stuff? And I think they told us they had met on Tinder. And I remember me and my co-student or whatever, we looked at each other like, you guys are getting married from Tinder? Really? I don't think I would react the same way now in 2021. And I don't know if you've noticed that change in trend. I don't know if you've noticed that at all. What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, we both live in, urban centers. So maybe that's a little bit of it. But I would say, if you're not online, something's wrong with you.
Hmm.
If someone were to say, yeah, I just prefer to meet people in person, I'm like, that's amazing. I mean, I haven't met a person in person in a very, very long time. Um, but if someone says to me now, like, I'm not online, I'm not ready for it. I'm like, well, all right, what are you gonna do? Like,
What's your plan?
poke someone with a 6 foot stick? Like, what are
Yeah.
you gonna do? So I just think, yeah, I mean, and you just like the New York Times marriage section, like, there is always at least 3 stories that began online. It's a really, really important and relevant way of meeting people now. And thank goodness for that, because yeah, I definitely had to lie a couple of times. Like, it wasn't Match, it was Starbucks. Like, so, but now it's fine.
No, it's definitely changed over time. And one thing, and just speaking on that, way back then, I was off social media, right? Like I had no, so I didn't have maybe I did have Facebook, and then I got off in 2013. But I'm bringing that up to ask another question. So I was off Facebook, Instagram. I don't think I had a Twitter. In the time that I was off social media, there was this thing that had popped up called the $200 date. That is a typical topic of discussion online. And I love the fact that when I asked you about it, you had never heard of this before.
No.
Have you looked it up since then?
Well, what I understand is that I mean, I don't know if I got it right, but that the 200 date is really like an expression of someone's interest, and that if they don't do that, then they're not really serious about dating you or something like that.
Yeah,
Is
that
that
was that was kind of my takeaway from it all. So it's like,
the gist of it?
what'd you say? Yeah. That's kind of the gist of it. And
Yeah.
I think that I had heard of, or at least maybe on a very base level, had known that if I'm really serious about somebody, I would take them out on this big extravagant dinner. And if I didn't really care about them, maybe I wouldn't do as much. But in your opinion, when you're
Mhm.
going on a first date, is that something that someone should pay attention to? How much they pay, where they take you? Is that something that they should care about?
I mean, this is all down to values and what people are looking for. So I would never prescribe anything like full stop, but I'll just say for myself how I see a first date, especially on a dating app. A first date is not a date, actually. And so I would always prefer, I mean, this is money, but it's also time. Like, these are our two resources. Well, I'll add a third, emotional investment. So there are three resources that come into a date. For the very, very first date, I would say what the most important thing is that someone asks for a date and shows up for a date and picks a place that is convenient to one of the people. They're on time. They respect whatever boundaries the other person is setting. They have a nice conversation that feels fun, um, where both people are making an effort. Um, and I personally don't care how much the date costs. Those things are way more important to me than if the bill is $200, or like, I have gone on a coffee date where I got there early and just bought myself an iced tea,
Hmm.
because who cares? Like, I don't even know this person. I don't need this person to dedicate $200 and 5 hours to me. I may not even want to be there for that long. So if someone's going to spend $200 on a date with me, I'd rather have that be the fifth or sixth date when it actually matters. Because if this person is just throwing money at the situation to show me something without actually knowing me, like, I have $200. I can take myself out to dinner. I don't need, like, what I need from that person is more, and this is personal. Like, I want to know that that they like me enough to ask me on a second date. Like, that's way more important than a first date.
I hear you. Yeah, it's not so much the money, that it's more so the conversation that you're having and that person actually showing you some respect, showing up on time, all those little things.
Yeah, I mean, but that, and even that, it's like, it's not, it's like, there's this kind of, this is really judgmental of me to say, there's this kind of Cinderella complex, I think, that happens with these dates,
Hmm.
where it's like, oh, like, I'm going on a date. Like, I won't go on a date unless it's dinner. I won't do this unless he shows me this. It's like, okay, that's fine. And you can wait for that experience, and those experiences do happen. But for the vast majority of people, they are sick of dating. Like, people are sick and tired of texting, and they are sick of dating. They're sick of being stood up and disappointed. So forgive a person if they're not going to put 110% into every first date. And when you can have that mindset, you will open yourself up to a lot more experiences. Now, having said that, the caveat is that you also limit your emotional investment in that person that is sort of commensurate with how long you've known them.
Right.
And so even if someone invests $200 in your date, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You're having to invest $200 worth of expectation, of mutual interest. There's a lot of guilt that comes along with someone spending that much money on you. It can really cloud your intuition about somebody, like, oh, he was okay, but he took me to such a nice place. Like, our conversation was okay. I wasn't that attracted to him, but it was so nice. I should just see him again. Like, surely a $5 Starbucks could have given you the same information without all the obligation and all of the confusion that comes with that kind of a price tag.
I had no idea that was. I had never even considered that being something that someone would think in their head when it comes to like how much someone would pay for a date. Wow, I'd never even thought of that. Has that come up with clients before, or is that something that you've experienced personally?
I went through that phase for sure, um, of being very like, I don't know. It's really funny that you said that because the women that I've worked with and myself in a former life, we were very judgmental of every single aspect of this. So if he doesn't ask within a certain time, done. Like if he doesn't check in a couple of days before, it's not happening. I remember one guy didn't check in with me, and I got on a group chat with my girlfriends, and they were like, screw him, he's not worth your time. And then, see this post by this dating coach, and then that post was like, you're worth more than this, like, don't treat yourself like garbage, blah blah blah. It turns out the guy was just like super slammed at work. I had been targeting a guy with a really ambitious job. He was totally upset that I canceled on him because I trashed his weekend. Like,
Oh, you canceled on him right before?
yeah, because I was
Oh,
like, I didn't want to get canceled. Do you know what I mean? It was
yeah.
just like all of this like defensiveness around this stuff. And also, oh, he picked that bar. Like, oh, he didn't, there's just so much judgment that goes into every single step that I think men are probably judging women on different things. But for a lot of women that I work with, and I work with them on this issue, um, it's like, damn, give the guy a break. Like, I swear, because I work with men, I'm like, I swear to God, they're not out to like to do all of these things that I think a lot of women think are happening. And then the funny thing is, so women are super strict about all this stuff,
Mhm.
but then after the fifth date, they will let anything fly.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Again, something I never really, never really. I think it's the fear of what you're talking about, the first date that really makes a person want to get rid of somebody before they get rid of you. And then after you realize that person is safe, somebody you can trust in, then you start to be a little bit more forgiving. Is that sort of what happens?
Well, forgiving and understanding for sure, that makes a lot of sense as
Yeah.
you get to know and trust somebody, but also just beyond that, like staying with something because, okay, I just want to get this shit done.
Mm,
We're already at date 5.
gotcha.
We're
Gotcha.
already, I don't want to have to go through this again. Like, okay, fine. Okay, fine. It's like that whole thing. And then what I would really like is for people to kind of flip that model on its head. Like, let's be open in the very beginning and get to know people. But as you start to get to know them better, and if you're not happy with it, like that is probably when it makes more sense to call it than before you've even hardly talked to the guy.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, along those lines about changing the way we approach online dating or just going out on a date in general, what are some common mistakes that you typically encounter when you're working with your clients?
Well, there are there are many,
I'd say, yeah, I
but
said
I would
mistakes again.
say,
Things that could be
yeah,
improved upon.
again, and actually, and I'm giving you a hard time because in a way, it's just the way that like we speak about things culturally. So you're not,
Yeah, I think we're on different because earlier it was a different sort of topic. This is something a little bit more finite, like
yeah, this
show
is
up
more
one
like
time.
things. This is more like things. Sorry, I'm just gonna.
It's okay.
This is sort of like things that people learn
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
really different perspectives. So, okay, please start with the dating profile, for example.
Okay.
I mean, I always, and this is something that I help people with almost exclusively. So I always start the conversation with like, there is no such thing as a perfect profile. The profile that worked is the perfect profile. So whatever that was for that person, you know. Having said that though, the profile is really like what people don't understand is that we're looking for fit. We're looking for quality of match. We're not looking for quality of person because every person is equal. Like every person deserves love. Every person is equal. Like
Okay.
there's no like setting standards. There's no like, it really makes me cringe when people are like, oh, where are the high quality people? Well, when you say someone is high quality, then that means you have quality, you have a standard. So you're always going to be like judging yourself based on some arbitrary notion of what is
High quality.
desirable.
Yeah, yeah.
So really like, so this is why people will create profiles that are so likable. And it's very easy. Like you put the hottest picture of yourself up, the one that demonstrates the most success. You write something really generic, like I love this. Um, maybe maybe you give yourself a discount on the age and a bonus on the height, and you're in. You're in. And this is what do guys, I hear like, what do guys want to, what do guys like, or what do women like? And okay, that's true to a certain extent, but I always like to compare dating profiles with like if you think about Nike, if Nike advertised to people that had feet, like all you need is 2 feet, their stores would be chaos. Everyone would be coming in looking for flip-flops and evening shoes. And the athletes, like the really ambitious, really thoughtful, discerning person would never go to Nike. So it really is like, what is your message? Like, what is each picture trying to say about you? Because that's your nuance. Like, that's like, okay, you have to be physically attracted to the face and the body and whatever, but really it's like the background of the photo and like the things that you're interested in. Like, there's always going to be somebody hotter than you, always. So, what is it about your unique combination that's going to really speak to that very small target audience that you're looking to? So the other day, as an example, I spoke with a teacher who was gorgeous, beautiful woman. And as we were talking, and she's a teacher and she has all these interests, and I said, I don't remember what I said, but she said, yeah, I work with inner city kids, so I have really thick skin around this stuff.
Okay.
That was a decision that she made in her career. She could have gone a lot of different options, but that was a decision she made because it was based on her values around equal opportunity and social justice.
Right.
That was nowhere on her profile. And it was like just this awesome. I love when it happens, like this awesome opportunity for her to bring out something that's like, how many women are like gorgeous, went to a great school and did this, and then also made this career choice. Like suddenly that's a really interesting person, in my opinion. But also it's going to attract a man who has a lot of options, but is looking for a long-term partner that shares those values.
Gotcha.
But that exercise of getting someone to realize like, hey, what's actually cool about you? Oh, like I'm kind, I'm funny. It's like, no one cares about that. Like, what actually is cool about you? So there was another woman who is just, it was funny. She's just like not afraid of heights at all. So she can go on like all these crazy adventures because it doesn't bother her.
Yeah.
That's just kind of cool. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's gonna be like, oh, I had this date with this woman. She's like really cool and funny, and then like she's done all these like interesting things. Like that's the date you want to go on, I think.
So you're saying one of the things that people could do to increase their chances of is to attempt to get a good match, not necessarily cast a wide net for everyone that might be just looking for a date. Put as much of the
Yeah.
particulars about yourself as possible in your profile so that other people can match those interesting things about yourself versus just trying to get as many matches as possible.
Yeah, that's really my belief. It's not a confessional. You don't have to include every single thing. Remember, the total objective of doing this is to get on a good first date. Nothing more, nothing less than that, nothing, absolutely nothing less than that, and nothing more than that. So to the extent that you can create a profile that is approachable, that is, it is general and relatable, but has a couple of like what I call like secret messages
Mm-hmm.
that they're the best matches are the ones where the photos are okay, like okay, fine, but then there's something in the profile where you think like, oh damn, I gotta message that person, like I just have to know. So for me, music festivals are a really big deal. I probably went to, concerts. I probably went to 50 concerts and music festivals in 2019. And so for anyone who even asks me about music festivals or has a reference to music festivals, I will talk to that person. And because the reason is because when I was at one of these festivals, I was just like, damn, I just want someone to go to this festival with me. Like, yeah, I want him to be like successful and kind and all that stuff. But I also just want him to like, I don't want him to be doing me a favor. I want him to actually want to go, maybe even more than I do. And so actually, it's a really interesting, like, people might hear that and think, oh, well, that's not husband material, or, what the hell is that? But actually, to me, it is, because it's like, then we share the same interest in music. So when we're in the car, we can listen to like the same music. Our idea of vacations is the same. I'm not a 5-hour, 5-star dinner person. Like, I want to see live music and live sports. That's what I like to do. So suddenly, just by this music festival filter, I'm getting all this information on the first cut. And again, I don't know if he's nice to his mom. I don't know if he wants a long-term relationship. I don't actually care at that point. What I do know is that we're going to have a fun first date. Like, and I'm going to leave that first date knowing more about something that I really love than I did before.
Well, I think that makes sense again in terms of what your approach to this dating stuff is, which is not trying to put the cart before the horse. Getting to meet somebody first and leaving the first date as the first date. And if you meet and talk and have a good time, then you move on to the second date instead of, looking at their profile and planning to marry them. That falls in line with your approach. So that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. I think that, and I'm speaking on single friends of mine, I do think sometimes people do put the cart before the horse. Are there other things that people maybe should withhold on a first date?
The best first dates for me have been the ones where we talk about nothing.
Seinfeld approach.
I had an extensive conversation about llamas with somebody that was just so funny. And I didn't even know what he did, and I actually didn't care. Like, I think those are the best first dates. But really, the concept of what to say and what not to say. I mean, what it really comes down to is your emotional investment in somebody. As soon as you start texting somebody, you have a relationship with that person. You're thinking about them, you're having feelings towards them, and all of that comes at a cost. And so, whatever you're sharing about yourself is an emotional investment. Maybe this is where my finance degree comes in. But what you want to do is really invest according to how long you've known the person. Because if you think about, well, and the reason for that is self-preservation. It's like a video game, like your body, your character only has like, what is it, like 4 health?
Depends on the
You
game.
can't,
It depends on the
yeah,
game.
like you can't take so many hits. A nick there, chip there, and suddenly you hate dating and you quit for 6 months. Like that is the experience that you need to avoid as much as possible. And so it's all about like establishing trust. The ultimate expression of this happens on the other end, where you end up having a 6-hour first date. You exchange life stories, you laugh, you cry, you get wasted, you spend the night, and you never hear from each other again. And that happens. And sometimes people get married, sometimes they don't. But the point is that it takes so much out of you. And it was more than you could afford. And so that's why whatever you're sharing or talking about on your date, this feeling of, oh, maybe he didn't want to go on a second date with me because I told him about how I cheated on my ex. Like now you're feeling judged about something that might have been really hard for you to go through. That's not such a great experience.
Yeah.
Maybe if he knew you better and knew that ex-boyfriend did this and like maybe if he knew the context of your personality, he wouldn't judge you in the same way. So it's really, in my opinion, and a lot of people put, oh, I want him to be trustworthy on my list. Well, trust comes over time. So in order for me to share something like that with another person, I need to know that they like me at least enough to ask me on a second date.
Yeah, again, that you see, you're making perfect sense to me. I probably should have. How long has your business been open? A good first date.
I've been in this field as a coach for 2 years, and then before that was a matchmaker. But really, my experience has come through, the hard way, like just being a single parent, no less, in New York City, which is the dating capital stroke hell of the world. And I have a very intense mom who is also divorced, who has been so supportive and really has helped me to see how she always sees the opportunity in where I am. And it's taken a long time for that to sink in. But as I've gotten older, I think, and just really understood like how powerful being single actually is, that's kind of been my greater mission is really to challenge a lot of these ideas around dating. Like someday there's this meme or this thing, someday you will be chosen by someone who really cherishes you. And when that day happens, everything you've been through will make sense. I was like, someday, like be chosen? Like, no, like, first of all, I have equal say in who chooses me. And second, well, why should my life only be validated if this quote unquote works out? Like, love is so serendipitous and miraculous and out of our control. How can my entire universe of like why is my lifestyle only valid if this outcome happens? Like that can't be true. It just can't be true. It's not true for me. Otherwise like otherwise all of this is a waste of time. And we all know that we don't have, especially after this year, we don't have unlimited time.
Yeah. I mean, you've been speaking a lot on, and most of what you've been telling me has come from experience. I mean, I think that's what you just said. When did you, when do you think you started to really appreciate that experience? Because I'm imagining once you got out of your marriage and then you transitioned into dating, I think you did mention there was a time in which you were dating everyone and just going on many dates without really as much knowledge as you have now. But there's a time then and there's a time in where you are now. Can you think of when you made the transition into being more, shall we say, enlightened or more informed about how you want to approach dating as a single parent?
I remember the exact moment that it happened. And it was one of those, it was such an important turning point for me. So basically I dated like I dated like a rabid animal at first. I just, whatever, you have a policy or you ask me out, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I did that for a while. And then I joined this matchmaking company where it was extremely targeted. And the client would say, I want him to make this much, and I'm looking for this type of relationship, and I will not take anything less. And I was like, damn, like, why aren't I doing that? Like, I want someone to pay for my meal. Like, I want someone who loves me unconditionally and runs the investment banking division at Goldman Sachs. Like, why can't I have that? So I ended up leaving. And I was like, well, now I have the skills. I'm just going to do this on my own. So I created my spreadsheet with all of the qualities that I wanted. I set my filters for the age appropriate, job appropriate, zip code appropriate. And I proceeded to date in this very systematic, robotic way. And I dated as many people as I could. And sometimes that meant 4 dates in a day. I would meet them wherever they were. And, this is why I started ordering cold drinks instead of warm ones, just in case I needed to get out earlier.
Okay.
And then after every date, I would rate them according to a scale of, A1, B, B1, C. I had it down. I think I might have gone on, like probably in a month, I might have gone on like 70 dates.
Wow. Yeah, you were
And
that was intense.
Or more.
4 more?
Yeah, or more. And I have to tell you, at the end of that, I probably had 2 or 3 second dates and probably 0 relationships, maybe 1 third date.
Wow.
And it was normally my choice. Until I went on a date with this guy. And I remember I showed up and he walks in and I was like, what? What is happening? Like, not only was he super attractive, but he was like my age, divorced, like really nice, on time, like all these things, so hot. And I was like totally overwhelmed. And we dated, and he was great. Like, I have this joke with my friends. It was like, yeah, I didn't feel guilty for ordering an entree.
Wait, this wasn't the Marine, correct? This was not the Marine.
No.
Okay.
And yeah, like this guy was so perfect. And then I was like, all right, game time, like the time to reel this in. So I was like, okay, we've been on first date, we've been on second date, we've been on fourth date, we've been, and like by the 6th date, no mention of exclusivity, no mention of this, even though we went out like every weekend and text each other every day. I was like, okay. And then my friends were like, well, did he say anything yet? And Instagram was like, well, you need to tell him how you feel and all this stuff. Everything was going fine. And then I called him and was like, well, do you have time to talk? And it was like a Wednesday and he was coming out of a meeting at 10 p.m., but he called me anyways. And I was like, well, I just need to know if we're on the same page and all this stuff. And he was just like totally unprepared for the conversation. And I was like, well, I can, I'm hearing all this hesitation in your voice and I just like don't want to waste my time. So I broke up with him. And I proceeded to not meet anybody else as cool. And I was like, wait, how come? I mean, we have been dating for what, like 2 months or something. Like, how also did I know that he was the one? Like, why was I putting all this pressure on it? And, it really just, after that happened, I think I was like, I'm definitely gonna have more standards than I did before, in a way, like again, not the word standards, but like I'm going to not date just anybody.
Right.
Like
I
I
know what you
want,
mean. I know what you mean.
but I'm gonna just release the chokehold on this. And, you know, and this is the other thing I love about dating is now, like, he's honestly one of my closest friends. And like when he has dating problems, he'll call me. And we go out for dinner and we have a blast and it's totally platonic. And what I know about him now is we would have made a terrible couple.
Mm,
And it's like that that learning process happened over 2 years.
wow. Okay.
So for me to wanna to nail it down in 8 weeks is crazy. So I think it was really that lesson that I've learned a lot, and a lot of my really closest friends are guys that I've dated actually, who would be terrible partners. Not terrible, but just not long lasting
Not great
romantic partner
matches. Not great matches.
matches. Yeah.
Mm.
And so it's really, now when I approach dating, it really is like I always target a vibe. I'm always about like, how do I feel? Like, was that fun? Um, and then also, how are they following up? Like, do they like me enough? And do I like them enough? Like, that's really where my focus is. Um, and if they want to call me once a month, that's fine. Like, I'm not only dating them. Um, and I'm just waiting. I'm up at the top of my mountain, like waiting to see who can make it up. Some guys quit, like they don't want to climb my mountain, and some guys are like, "Yeah, I'm really excited about you, and I want to." And then that becomes like, even more valuable when we have mutual interest and someone is consistent. Like that happened over COVID. I was seeing somebody who got tested like 3 times for me,
Oh, okay.
which is so nice.
Yeah.
So nice. And um yeah, it's just like things like that where you realize like it's just people will reveal themselves over time.
Mhm.
And also I'll reveal myself over time. Like sometimes I'm a real asshole. Like sometimes I don't feel like texting back. I just don't. Like it's very rude, but sometimes honestly speaking, I just don't, because I'm not inspired or whatever. Or I'm just not like, that person shouldn't be depending on me for some relationship because I'm not there.
Right.
And that's actually, I don't really take that stuff personally because I do it all the time.
I hearing you tell that story about you texting the guy once he got out of the meeting, that's happened to me multiple times. Because I in the hospital I have to have my cell phone turned off, and I can think of multiple times in which I is that the dogs? It's okay. What's your dog's name?
Cookie.
Cookie. Cookie, why are you making
Yeah,
all that noise? Lonely?
my attack.
But yeah, I remember getting out of the hospital a couple times because we don't have a great cell signal. So I would get out, turn my phone on, and it would be I've gotten those long text messages. It's just like, oh
Scroll,
my
scroll.
God.
I remember I got so pissed off at this guy because he would only call me after 10 or 11.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, it's so rude. Like, what does he not get? Like, so inconsiderate, so rude. Like, he just thinks of me as this, that, and the other. And then I realized he was in a different time zone.
Oh.
Because I'm like Kentucky, and I didn't realize I was a different time zone. And
Oh.
I was just like, oh, come on, Grace, you're better than that. But we're all so scared of being not taken seriously and rejected. And So it feels so much better to exit first,
Yeah.
but really it's too bad because in a way, like I said, it's really hard to find someone that you like, and it's really hard to find love. And um, sometimes, if we can give these things a chance without too much cost to ourselves, there may be a lot of opportunity in that.
Yeah, I think it's all about communication also. I mean, in each of those situations and the situations that I've experienced, it was just bad communication. Communication was a little bit better, we would have understood why that disconnect was happening. And I also like the fact that you were still able to maintain friendships. I also have plenty of friends that I've met in which relationship just didn't work out. Though those are some of my best friends. So I love the fact that you had that same experience also when it comes to dating, because just because a relationship doesn't work out doesn't necessarily mean that you two can't still hang out, talk, whatever it is that you want to do. So I think that's very encouraging also for people that don't find relationships. You can still get a different type of relationship. Okay, so I have a few more questions for you, just a few more, because I think Cookie's getting kind of restless. My question was because I heard you tell the story about when you messaged the guy once he got out of the meeting. You said that you had a conversation with your friends right beforehand, and I can recall advice from friends that didn't work out, and I can recall hearing about friends getting advice from their friends that just sounded off to me. So I didn't know if you had any words or thoughts about who may or may not be good people to get advice from when if they don't have a dating expert such as yourself at hand.
It's really hard for people to give good advice because you have a vested interest as a friend or as a parent or as a sibling. Like, it's hard to not have a vested interest in what their outcome is. And um, everybody's on their own path. And sometimes the things that feel like big mistakes in your opinion are actually a necessary part of someone else's growing experience. So the best advice is going to be one where you do most of the talking. And when the other person, and this is what I do in practice, but when the other person is just asking you questions and giving you a chance to really analyze your own situation in a different way out loud.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that person giving you advice is not going to be sleeping with the person that you're sleeping with.
Yeah.
Like, it's between you and that person. I'm getting mixed up here, but it's basically between the two people. And there's a lot that happens between closed doors that we don't know about as advice givers. So for people that are giving, bad advice sort of makes you feel bad, or bad advice makes you feel like the other person doesn't care about you.
Hmm.
Like, if he did that, he clearly doesn't care about you. Like, that feels terrible.
Hmm.
Like, how do you know he doesn't care? Maybe he's not able to care in this certain way, but it's not about, like, if a client of mine is hurt by what someone else is doing, I don't ever want to make it seem like he doesn't value her, because she's already feeling that way.
Right.
It's more about, well, this just doesn't feel like a good fit, like, there are two puzzle pieces that aren't matching here. And the sooner we realize that, the better, and what are some ways that you can take control of the situation? What are some ways that you can communicate how you're feeling? And to what extent do you think that would help your situation? That will give her the freedom to come up with a solution that she feels good about. I don't know what's best for her. She's run her whole life, become a lawyer, bought a house, takes care of her niece. Like, I don't know. She's a great person. She's a capable adult. We're all capable of knowing what to do. It's really just getting through the judgment and the shame and the hurt, kind of to re-access our intuition about what's right for us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like in my case, I was in a very kind of not very nice relationship for 5 years. And it wasn't even a committed, it was just a kind of one of those things. And it was what I needed to go through in order to learn what I learned. It just no amount of advice was going to prevent me from doing what I did. And so that was a feature of how I've come to where I am now. I'm not impervious now to those types of mistakes, but hopefully I'll screw up in a different way. I feel like sometimes these are the lessons. Now, if someone you feel like is in a sense of danger or something like that, that's different.
Yeah.
But so I think any advice that makes you feel like even more angry, or that you felt like you've been done wrong, that advice is not great advice.
Okay, I think that's a good thing to pay attention to. How you feel after you receive the advice from the other person. Okay.
Mhm.
I like that. I like that. So you mentioned well, you were talking about advice for situations regarding safety. So I think in our last questions, it's important also in terms of safety when dating, to think about safety when online dating. So do you have any advice to stay safe when it comes to online dating?
I've been really lucky so far in that aspect of things, and especially given the recent um, Asian Asian American attacks, especially on women. It's been something that's very top of mind for myself and also for a lot of my clients. Like a lot of people I talk to don't want to take public transportation anymore. They don't feel safe going out late at night. So all of those things I think keep in mind. Know your limits of what you're comfortable with. So for me, uh, to the extent I don't do massive background checks or anything, I don't believe in that. Usually when I'm texting somebody, I can kind of piece together what makes sense. Um, and if I don't get a sense of that this is a real person, then I don't go. And it's more intuition than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I pick a spot that's really close to my house. The spot that I meet for first dates is across the street from me, or like around the corner. So if they're running late, it doesn't piss me off. Like I can just show up, I go on the date, I order no more than one drink. We have a nice conversation. And then I go home at the end of the day and I stand up and I say, it was really nice meeting you. Which way are you going? And then they point that way and I'm like, okay, I'll go this way. This is even if I'm really into the guy.
Yeah.
And then I go home and see what happens next. And it's really like consistency over time. And people will also say things about themselves. Like I went on a date with this guy who had no social. I did not know him from anywhere. And he was like, oh, I'm at the office, no one's here. And he took a picture of his office. And it was like a really, really beautiful office. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then while we were on our date, he was talking about how he was really into his plant. And so he showed me a picture of his like desk plant. He's like holding his desk plant.
Okay.
And then in the third picture, he was like at his desk and like, or it was like a video, he was like listening to music at his desk and his office was empty. And I could see his computer was opened on like a spreadsheet. Like I couldn't see the spreadsheet, whatever. So I was like, you'd have to be a real psycho to fake those three pictures. Like to have a plant, like to create a fake office space, like you would have to be really insane.
Yeah.
So for me, that was kind of, even though I didn't know him for anywhere, it was like, okay, like that's kind of enough, I feel. And also he was very consistent over time. He was very respectful. Like for me, that was when I felt safe. I having put myself in a lot of situations that could potentially have been dangerous, but luckily nothing has happened.
Right.
I don't need to do that anymore. Like I'm good. I don't need to go to someone's house the first night I met them anymore. Obviously there are a lot of times where I'd want to, but it's like, all right, if it's going to happen, it can also happen next week. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it all doesn't need to happen tonight. So,
Okay, that makes sense. So
yeah.
pick some place familiar that you know that's not too far out. You figure out where they're going, and you go the opposite direction.
And you don't really have to give, like, you don't have to talk about, your super jumbo mortgage that you just got on your place in the Hamptons. Like, you don't have to talk about like money related things. You don't have to like lie or anything, but there's just certain things you don't have to drop hints about things that could open you up to that. I don't know. You don't
I
have to give people unnecessary information when you first meet them. And we're talking about a total stranger.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
So just
okay.
something to keep in mind.
All right. So, well, I do have a question about Bumble versus Tinder. We got to wrap things up. Do you have opinions? Just really quickly, do you have any opinions on Bumble versus Tinder? The approach, that
I think
is.
they're both great apps. And the thing that I like about both of them is that they're easy to use and they have a lot of people on them. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of like the inner circle and leagues of the world, just because the base is so small.
Okay.
So they have a lot of things. Bumble has great filters. So it can really help you to like narrow down your search. Tinder has a lot of people. I've heard it's a lot easier to get matches on Tinder. A lot of men are really frustrated by Bumble. They don't get a lot of traction. So those are just things to keep in mind. The profile writing is trickier on Tinder because it's just freeform. Freeform is the hardest. Bumble has freeform and questions, so questions can be easier for people to answer. And I also like Hinge a lot. I think Hinge is I like the format. I think it just helps people have conversations, but it is slower. It's like a little bit more cumbersome to use.
Right.
And the other app that I don't use often, my clients really love, is Coffee Meets Bagel.
Okay.
So those are the four. I don't really work with Tinder that much, but if a client wants to, I'm all for it. And the fifth one, and it's a distant fifth, but for my older clients, Match has actually been really helpful. So with all of these apps, though, there really is an approach because you have to make it as painless as possible. Otherwise, you will come to hate dating apps and hate your life.
Yeah.
And as it relates, so you really need to come up with a method that makes all of this very easy, no big deal. And a successful client is not one that finds their boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, that would be great. I could almost care less. It's more someone who's like, how's dating going? Yeah, it's good. Like, it's fun meeting interesting people, like going on a date this weekend. Guy seems really nice. Like, yeah, it's cool. Like, that's it. No stories. No, oh my God, I hate dating. Like, all that shit's like, it's fine. I think that is the kind of, if you can have that kind of energy around this process, it can actually be an additive, like a net positive, and you can see this period of your life, not even, but you can see this lifestyle, like the opportunities of this lifestyle, and have fun with it.
I love the positivity. I love it. Well, actually, I was going to ask you for some encouraging words, but I think you just delivered them. So unless you
Well,
got,
my encouraging words, my big thing is, I know everyone wants a home run. I do too. But, just like trust the process, trust the process, fall in love with dating, fall in love with your life, and really see being single as it's a legitimate landing place. Your life is not kind of like, it's not a journey. It's like it's your life. And finding the one is amazing. But in the meantime, like, please live and have fun. And I don't mean fun in like a hookup way, but definitely have sex. Like, do all these things that, when we're older, like, we're compromised. we can at least say to ourselves with a straight face, like, yeah, like it was interesting. Those were interesting times. And for people that are really discouraged and maybe don't feel like they're in love with dating or want a different perspective, I'm always happy to chat. I think that sometimes it's just that little conversation that can redirect people and help them feel better about their situation.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciated the conversation. I appreciate all of you, the technical support that you gave at the start of this podcast. Hey, maybe this is a third or fourth career for you,
Right. Dating coach, IT specialist.
All right. You can find Miss Grace Lee at A Good First Date. That's her Instagram. And, I'll put any other information that I can so people can find you in the description. Otherwise, thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye, Cookie.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
All right.